Hello, my friends. How you doing? I'm giggling a little bit because we have a fun show for you today. It is an all-star day here at Rebel World Headquarters. I'm Ezra Levant, the Rebel Commander. As you know, every day during the pandemic, we've had these live stream super chats. Super chat is what Google calls it. When we have the chat that's made super, when people chip in a few dollars or any other currency, frankly. Their comments are put in bright color. It's in the right-hand side of the screen there. And in fact, I think we've already had a few super chats today, which is amazing. Why I'm excited, though, is because we've got the whole editorial team together here at our world headquarters. So normally I do this show Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Sheila Gunn Reid and David Menzies do it Tuesday, Thursday. And Kian occasionally comes in, although last time he did, I sort of pushed him out of the way. Everybody is here at our world headquarters, along with the new chair of our advisory board, our friend Raheel Raza. So by my count, that is 5 people, where normally we only have one person on a day like today, myself. So I'm very excited. We're just sort of having a get-together here, talking about big plans, going over things, and we like to get together every once in a while. So in addition to me, you will have all the Rebel talent. And you know what? Normally we only roll for about an hour, maybe a couple minutes extra, but if there's an appetite on your part for more, I will certainly, I'm sure everyone would be certain to go a little bit longer. So I want to tell you a couple of things that I have in mind today. I'll just summarize some of the issues I have here, but it may be that we never get to them because you want to talk to all our talent together. By the way, yesterday I come home and I see this in my mailbox. It's the new special edition of the Epoch Times. This is a free newspaper they've circulated to thousands of homes in Toronto, promoting their democracy views about communist China. And I'm so very pleased with this because the CBC took a real run at these guys last time they did it, so obviously they don't bend the knee to anyone. I might talk about that newspaper, which is just, frankly, other than Rebel News, this is the most interesting media in the world to me. Every single story, just a cracker, firecracker, just crackerjack. I'm trying to find the word. Other things we have online that we can get to would include the New York Police Department sick of being abused by their own mayor. Some very passionate speeches by their benevolent association, that's a fancy way of saying police union. Our friend Kian Bexley was asking questions of Jason Kenney yesterday and got some interesting answers. So there's a lot of stuff to talk about, but you know what? I don't want to talk about these things right now. I can talk about the news any day of the week. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to scooch over, and I'm going to invite David Menzies and Sheila Gunn Reid to come on for the first time ever, the three of us united in a live stream super chat. They've been just sitting off camera. Come on in, scooch on. Sheila, David, how are you guys doing? I'm almost out of the screen. I'll be pushed up before. Good to see you.
3 of us together, Ezra. I'm just wondering, if we were the 3 Stooges, who's Mo?
No, well, you know, it's nice, and I'm glad Sheila's sitting next to me, and you're way down there.
I'm eating the sandwich.
You're the rose between 2 thorns. The rose between 2 thorns. Well, Sheila, how you doing? How was it coming from Edmonton to Toronto? Were the airports barren?
Yes, the airports are barren. There's nowhere to eat, and that's one of the things I noticed is how closed up Toronto still is. When I came in last night, I thought, okay, well, I'll settle into my hotel and I'll go get some food. Where do you get food around here? You have to take out if the places are even open. A lot of places aren't open, and then you have to find somewhere to eat it. Yeah. That's not like that at home. We're in stage 2 of opening. Starting June 12th, so like our rec centers are opening, our gyms are opening, our nail places are opening, which is kind of exciting. Even our schools can open for diploma exams, and you don't even have patios open yet.
No. So restaurants are open in Alberta?
Yes, at 50% capacity.
And I don't understand, guys, why it is that in Ontario you can get a massage, but you can't get a haircut, you can't get your nails clipped. How is that scientifically explained? I mean, it doesn't make sense. And by the way, I understand, I want to double check this because I heard this on the radio and I said, no, this can't be right. When they do open patio service at restaurants, I heard something about the washrooms will still not be open. that's going to impact beer sales.
Well, not just that, but how is that hygienic? I mean, I think of a washroom as a place where you go in and you hopefully come out a little bit cleaner.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's just very strange. You know what? They said 2 weeks to flatten the curve. That's what they said. They said 2 weeks. We're into month number 3, well into month number 3. I think they're just enjoying the power. They're enjoying, and Doug Ford here in Ontario is enjoying being the toast of the Toronto Star and the fancy people. I think that we are at the we are past the watershed point where the cure is now worse than the disease.
And you know, Ezra, it's very interesting. You mentioned Doug Ford. For the 7th week in a row, Mocha and I were out at Queen's Park covering those great people that are coming out there clamoring for the economy to open up. As you know, after week 1, Doug Ford called these people a bunch of yahoos.
Yeah.
At week 2, those who had an upside-down Canadian flag, the Premier said, I will personally pack your suitcases to get you out of the country. And yet we had a really big protest of the Black Lives Matter people for racial justice on that Saturday at Queen's Park. Do you recall Premier Ford, with the lack of social distancing that they practice, much like the other protesters, calling them a bunch of yahoos? Or I guess it depends on what it is you're protesting, as opposed to the science of social distancing.
Yeah. Well, and Justin Trudeau, of course, who's been self-hiding in his house for 2 months, goes to Parliament Hill to pose for taking a knee. And as I said in my monologue the other day, what is he taking a knee against? Because he is the system. He's been Prime Minister for 5 years. He's the one who fired a woman of color as Justice Minister. He's a person who angrily fired Selena Cesar-Chauvin. He's the one who was in blackface. So what's he taking a knee against? And who's he... Like, how can you fight the past? This is his classic move. He takes himself out of it as if he's a passive observer and says, we have a lot more to learn. Oh, when I groped that woman in Creston, BC, is a teachable moment for all of us as society.
Yep.
Sheila, is Jason Kenney getting support? I see on Twitter, which is always a bad estimate for public opinion, I see that he's not being well received for his handling of the virus. I think by most measures, his handling of the virus has been the best in Canada. What's it really like on the ground out there?
Well, you know, it's hard to tell. I suppose the proof is in the pudding, right? Like Alberta's, our instances of the virus, it's rapidly falling. So is that a testament to how well Jason Kenney's measures worked, or is that just a testament to the fact that the disease didn't spread fast in Alberta? We are opening quicker than everybody else. We are getting back to work faster than everybody else. But for Albertans, did that happen fast enough? Did it happen fast enough given that we were already suffering from negative oil prices when this hit? The shutdown, however it must have worked to slow down the virus, again, is the cure worse than the disease, especially when we already were spiraling into unemployment. So the faster Jason Kenney gets Alberta open back up, the better. But there are a lot of Albertans who are mad that it even had to be shut down at all. And you know, Jason Kenney is always going to have his detractors, people who, no matter what he does, they're not going to like. Jason Kenney, during the pandemic, was doing the work he saw that the federal government wasn't doing. He sent people to the airports. When he felt like the federal government wasn't acting fast enough. And I guess some of that proactive work, picking up the slack where Justin Trudeau let it go, that's probably one of the reasons that we are in stage 2 of our opening on June 12th.
You know, you were talking about how bad Alberta was beforehand. I just sent, Justin, I don't know if you got it by WhatsApp, I sent you a graph by an Alberta economist named Trevor Tomby. I don't know if you pronounced that last name. Let me know if you got that. I think I sent that in the WhatsApp there. It shows, and we'll have it on the screen. Let me know if you got that, or I can resend it. There's unemployment, but then there's what he calls, effective unemployment. So this chart here, the actual unemployment rate, if you ask Statistics Canada, is less than this. But this takes into account the drop in hours. So if you are being told that you're only working 4 hours a day now instead of 8 hours a day. If you click in and zoom a little bit, effective unemployment rate in Canada, May 2020, displays what the unemployment rate would be post-virus if the participation rate and average hours worked remain constant. So this is an economist who did this. This is not my homemade graph. So the unemployment rate in Ontario, the effective unemployment rate, so that's guys who have not yet been laid off, but they've been told, yeah, you can come around 4 hours a day, or yeah, you haven't been fired, but you're just on, it's actually, Alberta is one of the worst, 24.9%. Newfoundland, Labrador, 25.5%. Ontario, 27.1% effective unemployment. And that is courtesy of Trevor Tomby, who is, I think he has his political views, but I think he generally calls it fairly squarely. Sheila, do you want to read some of these super chats we got here? I'll let Sheila read the super chat and lead the quarterback. And then, by the way, we have other talent waiting in the wings. I see through the glass window of our studio, Raheel Raza, the chair of our advisory council. We're going to invite her in a moment. And Andrew, and I don't even know how to pronounce your last name, Chapados? Chapados.
Chapados? It needs more Greek.
Is there a in there somewhere? No, there's no R at all, actually.
Nothing.
No, it's not even in there. No, it's not even in there. Okay, fine.
Okay,
this isn't live. We'll just cut. Just
you
cut
know the viewer at home isn't privy to what you're doing with that.
Just cut this out. Just edit this. Justin, edit this part out before we broadcast it. Okay. Okay.
Okay. Should we get to the super chats?
Ahead,
okay, let's stay on track. It's the same thing I have to do with the David, I guess, that I have to do with you. Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. I was. Okay, so we've got one from Jack R. Gives us $5 Canadian. Kenny is a red Tory. Why else is Alberta still playing talking games with Trudeau? I would suggest that Kenny's probably not a red Tory. However, he is a staunch federalist.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And so while separatism is on the rise in Alberta, Jason Kenney, I think he probably has designs on the Prime Minister's chair. Mm-hmm. And so he's going to discourage any of that and try to work cooperatively within Canada, and that's just how it is. It looks like I skipped over a bunch, though. We've got one from Kane Enmark, gives us $5 Canadian. Is David Dorn get the same treatment as Jasmine Barnes? David Dorn is the retired police officer who was shot in a riot. And I don't know who Jasmine Barnes is. I'm sorry, Ezra, you?
No, I don't know who that is, and I'm sorry if I should know, but I'll Google it. David Dorn certainly isn't getting the coverage he should. A black retired police officer murdered in the riots. I say again, these riots in the name of black justice have set back the black community economically. Mm-hmm. And I think there were rioters, both black and white. And one of the things that Anna Slatz discovered in her U.S. visit was that Antifa was more radical and violent in some cases than Black Lives Matter. And she actually showed video in Washington, D.C., I think it was, where a Black Lives Matter activist was saying, don't riot. That will discredit us. It'll be used against us. It'll justify negative consequences. Begging, and we've seen videos of some peaceful leftist activists saying, please don't riot. But Antifa has its own designs. And I tell you that not only economics, but the cause of racial harmony has been set back decades because these riots were so specifically deemed, labeled, named as Black Lives Matter riots. And I think that's not accidental. I think this is division by those who want to divide Americans, and it's dividing Canadians too.
Well, and you can almost set your watch by these riots. They happen in a presidential election year pretty well.
Absolutely.
We've got another one from Kane and Mark, $2 Canadian. I want my Kian in there too. You guys, well, he'll probably come in a bit. He's just a little busy in the office here, but these chairs are on wheels, so you can just wheel me out and wheel Kian in. We've got one from Proud Boys Calgary. That's my friend Justin. He gives us $5 Canadian. Gym's opening on Friday. Cowtown president going to get back his gains. Never skip leg day. Daily reminder, Sino Partium Comunista Dendela Est. So
That's Latin for the Chinese Communist Party must be destroyed. You know, I think it was Cato. Was it Cato or who was it? Forgive me, I can't remember. In the debates would always say in the Senate, I think it was the senator, always said, Carthage must be destroyed. Carthage must be destroyed. He ended every single speech he gave on any subject with Carthago delenda est. He was obsessed by it, and he helped, in fact, war did come. And I think that the Chinese Communist Party is a risk to the world, like the Soviet Union was. I'm not going to say like Nazi Germany was, because I don't think they're that, it's that acute or hot a threat, but I think it is as grave a long-term threat to the world's freedom. I think the Chinese Communist Party must be destroyed. And that's not the Chinese country or the Chinese people or the culture or the language, but the Communist Party of China, whose first victims are the Chinese people themselves. All right, let me just jump in
Sean,
here.
if I may say too, Ezra,
Yeah,
the
go
other
ahead.
part of that message, the gyms. Why can't we get the gyms reopened? I hear so many people clamoring for this. Healthy body, healthy mind, after all. There's no real reason you can open up a Costco or a Walmart and not open up a gym and practice social distancing. I mean, like, look at me. I've got a washboard stomach. It's just got like 30 pounds of laundry on it right now.
Yep.
I really miss the gym. I got to get back there.
I thought I would love having the excuse of, well, I can't go to the gym, it's illegal. You wouldn't want me to break the law, would you? But I find that, first of all, I obviously didn't need that excuse for the first 48 and a half years of my life. And no, it's, you know, we've shown the demographics before, and Justin probably knows how to find these stats. I've asked him to do it so many times, so I don't even need to, he probably knows better than me. If you look at the stats, Ontario has pretty good stats. You know what I'm talking about, Justin? If you type in COVID-19 Toronto, they're pretty good stats. The deaths of people, most people in the gym are young, let's say under 40.
Yeah.
The deaths of Canadians under 40 from this virus, total, I think it's like 3 people. And I'm not saying that that's happy, I wish it were 0.
Yeah.
But more people have died from collisions with wild animals. It's 30 or 40 a year. I don't know how many lightning strikes kill a year in Canada, maybe it's 1. So that's how rare this is like 1 in a million, 1 in 10 million, especially for young people who are the folks going to the gym. There is no reason. Can you zoom in on some of those? Oh yeah, that's your stats. Zoom in, zoom, zoom. I think it's that chart at the bottom. So look at that, and you have to put the mouse over it. So under 19, death, is it still 0? It's 0. And then what's that next age bracket? 2, so a grand total of 2 people in intensive care. Nothing else. One fatal case under age 30. Is this Ontario stats or Toronto stats? So in the entire city of Toronto, GTA, 6.5 million people, a single person under age 30 has died from it. I tell you that there's more pedestrian accidents in this busy town. And what's the 40 to 49? 7. Okay, and again, I'm not saying that's great, but what we have here, if I'm reading this correctly, is under the age 50, the grand total of people who have died in this city, I think you said, is it 8?
yeah.
9. And that's terrible that 9 people have died. How many shootings have there been, by the way? And how many people, I mean, how many suicides from people whose economic lives were ruined, who are just depressed from the loneliness? 9 people under age 50, is that what we just said? 9 people under age 50? And don't tell me you can't open the gyms.
Yeah.
Don't tell me you can't. And by the way, I put it to you that some of the riots in America were because you coop up people
Yep. Yep.
and you say, don't go to the park, don't go run around, don't go get some exercise, don't go with your friends, don't go blow off some steam, don't go have a drink, don't go out, stay cooped up, and then finally say, I'm going out and I want some action. Woo! You
Yep.
know,
Yep.
I'm not excusing it, I'm just trying to say I believe that was like Tinder that caught fire.
Yeah. They created the conditions of powder keg for some people. And I wonder how many of the people who were in Toronto at the BLM protests were just there for a day out.
Yeah,
Because you could get out. I
Right.
mean, if you've been to Walmart lately, there's people just wandering around.
And you know what's funny about that, Sheila, is that the focus point, the meeting point for the BLM march to Queen's Park was Trinity Bellwood's Park. And that's where Mayor John Tory has got those coronavirus circles painted into the grass. I'm wondering, do you think the protesters stayed in their circle before assembling and marching? But yeah, we're in peak madness, I would say.
Well, listen, David and Sheila, it's such a pleasure to be the three of us, peas in a pod. I'd say it's like we're triplets. I look at that, and
true.
it's the brothers from my brothers from another mother.
It's
I'm joking. It's great to have you guys here. There's only room for three of us to jam together in this. I mean, maybe if I really sucked it in, we could fit Kian in here also. But what I want to do is I'm going to let's pass the baton tag team style.
Okay.
I'm going to invite you guys to take a break and to invite our new chair of the Rebel News Network Advisory Board, Raheel Raza, to come in. And then we got more talent. We got Andrew something who's going to come in. And I'll ask him finally how to pronounce his last name. And let me say goodbye to you guys now. We might pull you back in. And thanks for joining. And I'm going to invite my friend Raheel to come in.
Exit stage left.
Yeah. Okay. So there's just we got wheels on these chairs, and everybody's in the office today. So we're having fun. I got to tell you, we got a little barbecue coming. So you could send the bylaw cops to try and crack down on us. They got to find our underground bunker first. And here she is, Raheel. How you doing?
I'm great, thanks.
Well, it's nice to see you again, and we had you on just a couple of days ago, welcoming you again. I mean, all our viewers know you very well.
Yes,
But
it's
great
fantastic to be here. The energy is great. But unfortunately, you can't call me a pea in a pod because you're a white man who's soon becoming very fast a minority. And I'm a brown Asian Muslim woman, but I'm delighted to be here.
Well, it's great. And you know what? One of the things we do, we call it Super Chat. And I was just talking to you about it beforehand. As you can see, I'm showing Raheel right now on my computer. So anyone who's watching, they see you and me chatting. But on the side here, tons of comments. It's like a ticker tape. And it's too many to read. Like you couldn't even read them all. They're just flashing by.
Yeah.
But for folks who chip in a little bit of dough, and we use that to pay the bills because Google shares 70% of that with us, they put their questions. I mean, look at it. Here's an incredibly generous, generous $50 super chat.
Oops,
Whoops,
sorry.
Truby D44. What do you all think about them canceling cop shows on TV? Shows that have been going for 33 years. It's crazy. I mean, do the executives of these shows think the virtue signaling means that much to them, or do they believe cop shows are wrong? Or do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, this is the level of madness that we've reached. I was reading that in Minneapolis they want to defund the police department. I mean, how can you have a society without any law? I mean, it's so important to have the lawmakers, to have the police department. That's not the solution to the problem. The solution to the problem is massive education, both in the community and among the people who are the lawmakers.
My view is wealthy people will always protect themselves.
Yes.
Either they'll move to a less dangerous neighborhood, they'll live in a gated community, or they'll hire private security. A lot of fancy apartments, condos in New York have a doorman. I don't know if they're armed, but the rich will take care of themselves. If you take police out of these cities, you are hurting those who can't run.
Absolutely, and they are the ones who always get hurt in all of this, during this coronavirus. Now, my two pet peeves today, and every week I have a peeve, is the fact that the playgrounds, the kids' playgrounds, are not open. Now, I understand that you've been going around with a snipper. Can you come to...
It's absolutely true.
Can you come to my area?
You know what? I just bring a little pair of scissors and I just cut that tape because the tape says caution. So I say, okay, kids, let's play with caution. Be cautious on the playground. Don't tell me that. I mean, like I just showed the stats. Not a single person under 20 has. It's just not a kid's disease.
It's so unfair on the kids and the family.
And it's not healthy. Kids need to burn off energy. And you know what they're doing? They're watching Netflix and.
There's too much
it's time. Too much screen time.
It's too much screen time. And then you say, okay, what can we do? Let's go to the park. So you take them to the park, but everything has got a yellow tape around it.
Well,
I think I'm going to do what you did.
You know what?
I'm going to take a clipper.
And I take a clipper to cut the thick plastic tags that hold the swings up. And kid scissors that have a blunt top. So a little scissor, I just put them in my pocket so it's not the pokey kind. You know, that,
So you've actually done it?
oh my God, every week.
Okay, all right, good.
I don't care. No, come and get me. Come and get me. We'll fight you. Fight the fines.
I'm gonna follow suit. And my other peeve is...
And if anyone comes to
Yeah.
get you, film it, Raheel,
All right.
on your phone, because I don't know if you've been
Yes, I've
seeing,
been
we've got the
following, yeah.
fightthefines.com.
It's fantastic.
I feel so good about that
we
campaign.
are the only people at Rebel who has to fight the fines.
Yeah.
And I've been telling everyone about it because, you know, they need to be aware that this is available for those who are overstepping their authority.
Well, you know
and-
what? We got to fight the fines on this playground issue. Can you call up the young lady from North Bay? Do you know what I'm talking about, Justin? If you go to fightthefines.com, Raheel, one of the first cases we took was a single mom who was cooped up for 2 months with her daughter in a small apartment or house, didn't have, and just, they were just going stir crazy. And they went to the park, there was no one else there. So the idea of catching,
Yeah.
now we now know that no one's caught it outdoors, young people don't catch it anyways, but let's just play a little bit of that. By the way, for people who want to learn more about our program, it's called fightthefines.com. We're still taking new cases. In fact, this morning, we talked about a case. I don't want to give it away yet because I want to make sure all the parts are in place. So we are still taking new cases. Here, so this is a story that Sheila did, and we sent our cameraman up to North Bay. I just want to play a little bit. This,
Okay.
you have to have a heart of stone to not sympathize with this mom and her daughter. And make sure you play the part, Justin, where the daughter, the young daughter, talks about how she felt when her mom was arrested. Take a look at this.
And it culminated in Bridget being handcuffed, stuffed in a cop car, verbally abused by the police. They called her names, and her belongings were searched. She was searched, she told me, under her clothes, separated from her daughter for 20 minutes. I'm a mom of kids. My kids would be absolutely in hysterics just beside them.
And we sent our cameraman all the way up to North Bay there to meet this young, no one else would help her. No one else would help her. Who would help her? Where are the civil liberties associations who would normally rage against a young woman, a single mom no less, being thrown in the back of a cop car with cuffs? No one is there. I feel so good about this, Sheila, that we're helping this. That's actually a conversation I had with Sheila about the video. Raheel, you can't hear the audio because you don't have an earpiece.
Okay.
But that's the mom up there in North Bay. We have another clip. If you can find it, Justin, don't knock yourself out. That was actually after the first video. Sheila and I were sort of chatting about it. Nice young lady. You can see the park.
Yeah.
Like there's no
There was
one
no one
around.
there.
It's a beautiful park, by the way. No one was there, but there's this one clip, and Justin, it's worth it for you to. We'll read some more super chats while you find it. The girl, her mom was arrested. I think she was handcuffed, put in the back of a police car. And what her daughter said about that, I'm not going to tell you. I want you to hear it with your own ears because it'll break your heart. I'm not going to steal her thunder. While Justin's looking for that, let's whip through a few more super chats. Kane and Mark, I want my key in there. He's coming up. He's in the room there. Am Lonely Girl 2, $5. Hello from USA. Well, thank you very much. Travis Colson, $14. I've literally had to stop sharing Rebel News posts because of all the backlash and hateful comments for having a different opinion and supporting the Yahoos.
Well, the reason why this is so important is because the different opinion is important.
Yeah. Well, and our motto is telling the other side of the story.
Yes.
At AF, $20. I've given up on Canadians. Glad you haven't. Well, thank you. Derek G, have you heard of the Sunrise Movement? Millie Weaver from InfoWars did a report on them, and it appears they might be for something about the riot. I have not heard of that. I like Millie.
Okay.
Oh, I hear in my ear that Justin has found the clip. Here's that young girl who saw her mom arrested for the crime of going to the playground. Take a look.
We weren't hurting anyone. We were here by ourselves. The police showed up. 2 officers approached us and told us that we were breaking.
And they put handcuffs on my mom.
I told them that we weren't harming anyone, but that we needed to get outside and get some normality and just get some fresh air. We were talking for a little while, just like on a human-to-human level, explaining like where I was coming from and all of this mental health, the lockdown, 2 months being inside with my daughter with no support. They proceeded to call backup. The sergeant showed up here. Same thing. I tried to discuss it with him. He didn't want to hear it. He grabbed my arm, took my backpack off, proceeded to put me in handcuffs, separated me from my daughter. I was taken up to the police vehicle where a cop did a body search on me, and it was very thorough and invasive. From there, they put me into the back of the cop car, and I didn't even know where my daughter was at that time. They went through all my things against my will. We were separated for about 20 minutes. He called me an idiot and yelled in my face. They finally came back and released me from the cop car, took my handcuffs off, and gave me an $880 ticket. From there on, they didn't say anything. They just gave me the ticket and told me if I didn't pay it, that they would take my license away from me. And so we left the park, hand in hand, me and my daughter. That's how it happened. It's been terrible. My heartbeat has been like racing since this happened. I'm up till midnight, till 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm having night sweats. I've lost weight. I can't believe that we're living in a country that's capable of doing this to the citizens. I'm a student at Nipissing University. I'll be going into 4th year. I'm a single mom. The only income I receive is through OSAP. I don't have the money to pay $880, and I'm doing everything I can to support my daughter, and I don't know what I'm gonna do.
You know, it wasn't actually in the clip. I'll say what the girl said. She said, it was at the beginning? Oh, I didn't hear it. I didn't actually hear it. The girl said, do I have to get a new mummy?
Oh.
Because her
mom
arrested, handcuffed, body searched, put in the back of a cop car, separated from her mom for 20 minutes. I believe all of that is illegal, by the way. Who would help that mom? We did. And that mom is not your rebel demographic, but she's a very working class woman up in North Bay. I am so proud of the fact that we're helping her.
Yes.
And if you look through the fightthefines.com, most of the people who are being punished here, again, are working class people who, first of all, can't afford. You think that mom can afford an $880 fine?
No, and it's fantastic that Rebel is doing this. I think that you're the only ones who are doing it, and it's important because you know some of the stuff that's happening is so against just basic human rights.
Well, and I think where are the other civil liberties groups? Because we're supposed to be a website. We're not supposed to be a civil liberties group. Well, let me say this. We've got other talent stacked up in the control room there. We've gone through some super chats and we said hello and you gave us some of your thoughts. Is there anything else you want to share with Rebel viewers? I'm just going to skim the super chats to see if anything in particular. Oh, I just want to read Ninja. Gave $20. As a person of color and a Canadian who served in the Canadian military, I support all Canadians no matter what color you are. Do you really believe there is systemic racism in Canada?
Perfect question. Thank you so much for this. This was my second peeve that I was going to talk about. I do not think. This remark of the Prime Minister that there is systemic racism in Canada, and he says it with that drama queen accent of his, and he says it with so much sincerity, it really rankles with me. I am a person of color. I've been here for over 3 decades. I do not believe that a generalized statement saying that all Canadians are systemically racist is something that sits well with us.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, there is racism, but there is racism everywhere in the world. Name me one.
Humans are flawed. Human beings are flawed, and we have sins, and we prejudge, and it's a humanity problem.
And as a community, we've always said, let's not make generalized statements. When all Muslims are called terrorists, Muslims say, do not make generalized statements because, that's not
good
something
point.
we do.
Yeah, good point.
So here we have a Prime Minister making a generalized statement saying that there is systemic racism. There isn't.
Yeah.
My family and I have lived here. Yes, we come across issues of, bigotry and discrimination, but systemic racism, it means that every Canadian is basically inherently racist. That's a terrible thing to say because what happens now is that it feeds into the whole Islamophobia issue. It feeds into the victim mentality. It feeds into why M103 is so popular. And what it does is it gets him votes.
Yeah, it's so frustrating, and he's dividing us against each other instead of. Wouldn't it be nice if we were united more than ever as a country?
Of course. I mean, together, whatever the issues are, we can fight. I think Canada is the best country in the world to live in. I'm a proud Canadian, and I would, fight injustice, discrimination, bigotry, xenophobia at every level. But I would never say that Canadians are systemically racist, because they aren't. They are wonderful people, and we've seen the difference. You look at, the marches, the peaceful demonstrations, the way Canadians have stepped out of their comfort zone to help each other. But now we've got people, our leaders, dividing us for the sake of politics.
Yeah. Raheel, we're so proud to have you affiliated with us as the chair of our advisory council, which we have to get going, but you're the keystone for that whole thing. So it's nice to see you, my friend.
Thank you.
All
I
right.
will slide myself out.
Okay. It's good to see you. Well, that's Raheel Raza, our friend, and she's been a guest and a friend of mine for many years, even back at the Sun News Network, and now she is the boss of our advisory council. And who is sliding in here?
Okay. This is going to be the greatest show that we've ever done here at Rebel News. I'm telling you right now.
Yeah, I think you need a little work on that. What's with the
going
mask?
on?
What's with the mask?
I don't know. I just saw it sitting around outside in the office, so I figured I'd wear it. I figured it would be like a surprise.
So that explains that.
So what's new? What have we covered? What are we covering?
Okay, well, first of all, welcome. And there were some folks who, inexplicably, Kane and Mark, I want my Keenan, he calls you Keenan, I want my Keenan there too. Ha ha ha, you guys laugh out loud. So maybe it's a joke.
Who would I be to disappoint the viewers?
I think that might be a sarcastic post. He doesn't seem to know you well if he's calling you Keenan.
Yikes.
So, tough spot being,
The person that nobody can spell the name right of.
Well, I've had my challenges with that too. Well, Kian, how you doing? How's it in Calgary?
It's good.
Now, you used to fly everywhere for us. I mean, list some of the places. I can remember Stockholm.
Yeah.
And Hong Kong. Madrid.
Yeah.
That's in Spain, I know that.
Pretty much all across Canada. Alabama. The panhandle of Florida for the Donald Trump rally.
That's right.
San Jose, San Diego, LA. To interview Blair White once, I think.
Yeah. You've been in New York a few times. You tried to chase down Gerald Butts there, if I recall.
Yeah, that didn't work. Butts got away.
So you've been doing some, and then the pandemic clipped everyone's wings. I deeply regret that, because you were doing some great journalism. But I feel like things are back on a little bit now.
I hope so. I'm eager to get going again. I remember there was a couple weeks, maybe a month, maybe just over a month, where we were sort of stuck inside doing videos at home and whatnot. And the first day that I went back outside to go interview a coffee shop that was being harassed by the police, it felt like the old days. It felt great to be out and about, actually doing real journalism on the streets, speaking to people, covering the other side of the story that nobody else is telling. And we've been able to do that as we sort of get back into the groove of things after the pandemic. And even just yesterday, we were able to get some great work done with Jason Kenney. He actually took a question of us.
I'm going to throw to that in a minute, and I know we're going to talk about that, but the first trip you did, once sort of the flight freeze was lifted, not that it ever really was frozen, was to Ottawa.
Yeah.
And you had been calling in every day for a month to try and get in that phone call, press conference phone call, and they kept on saying that it was neutral and random, and we knew it wasn't, so you went in person. And Justin, can you scare up that video from Let Us Report, where Kian went to Rideau Cottage, which is the Prime Minister's house where he's been self-hiding for 2 months, and you showed your Rebel ID, you accurately identified yourself, you walked through the front gate, it was great. I was watching this.
Let me in.
Yeah, I was thinking, hey, this is a surprise. And then you were literally put hands on you, arm behind your back in that uncomfortable, I'll break your arm if you don't obey me moment. And they frog marched you out of there. And I watched the whole thing. You had not broken the rules. You had not lied or misidentified yourself. You were not a threat in any way. Here, let's put the sound up a bit.
T20, when Justin Trudeau is having his RCMP throw out a journalist for no reason, because I wouldn't show him my phone. I wouldn't show him what pictures I've taken. You're twisting my arm harder. How do you sleep at night knowing that you are leading to the death of this democracy? What was his name? Sergeant Leduc.
Nope, resist, okay?
I'm not resisting anything. You're just doing a bad
You're
job.
not under arrest, you're just being escorted out.
I'm not under arrest, but you have your hands on me like this? What are you doing?
Yeah, you gonna walk free out of the site?
By the way, can you talk a little more in the mic? I'm hearing just the same.
There you go.
So I want to suggest that if you were not Kean or even Keenan, but rather if you were a CBC government journalist or someone from the Toronto Star, or even someone from a left-wing outlet like the TAI or the National Observer, and if the Prime Minister who had ejected you was not Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, but rather Stephen Harper, I put it to you that that videotape we just saw there of police physically escorting you off the property would have been the top of every newscast that night, the front page image of every newspaper the next day, all the questions in question period, statements of support by the Canadian Association of Journalists, Canadian Journalists for Free Expression, Canadian Civil Liberties Association, Reporters Without Borders, Canadian to Protect Journalists. You would have even had, letters signed by every journalism professor at Carleton, Ryerson, etc.
Yeah.
And you probably would have even had other journalists boycotting Harper's press conferences until some amends were made. You would probably have an investigation from the Public Complaints Commission and the RCMP, and you'd probably have some of the United Nations issue grave concern.
Oh yeah, there would have been some international coverage on that if it was a CBC journalist, if it was Stephen Harper. And we, like, I mean, there's examples of that happening when Stephen Harper was even Prime Minister. Just when Stephen Harper would actually take less questions than usual, the whole press gallery blew up. Like, they just lost their minds. But there's this complete double standard when it's Justin Trudeau because of Terry Guillon. It always comes back to him. Terry Guillon used to be the president of the Parliamentary Press Gallery, and he moved this sort of lateral career move to Justin Trudeau's PMO. And he was the guy that actually sicked the RCMP on me that day. He knows exactly what he's doing. And when he was the head of the Parliamentary Press Gallery, when Stephen Harper was Prime Minister, it was basically like having a Justin Trudeau staffer run the show, run and corral all these reporters. That's why they were all so coordinated against Stephen Harper.
Now, I see some super chats coming in, and I don't want to ignore them. I also had instructions in my ear from Justin that I either forgot or ignored. Can you tell me again what you said, Justin? Got it. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to play a clip from yesterday. You got on the phone line with the Premier of Alberta, Jason Kenney, and unlike Justin Trudeau, he actually took a couple of questions from you. So we're going to play that clip. And during that, and then we'll come back and I'll let you say a word after that. And then we're going to have Sheila Gunn-Reid come in, and she's going to bang through these super chats that I have been ignoring because I'm too in love with the sound of my own voice. So, oh, he's going to kick me out. Oh, is that a fact? Thank you, because I understand there's a barbecue going on, and this is an outrage that I am here instead of there. So, so that's the order of operations. So go ahead with the key and vid.
Hi, Premier. Thanks for the opportunity to ask you a question. I also have two, and they're both for you. Several weeks ago, a man was protesting Justin Trudeau's gun grab outside the steps of the Alberta legislature. He was hauled away by his arms and his legs, and that Albertan was actually physically distancing. The numbers at that protest were actually pretty low. In comparison, thousands of people have come together in downtown Calgary and in Edmonton, across the province, and they were packed like sardines. Nobody was physically distancing, and nobody was given a ticket either, much less arrested. So I'm wondering why that was. And also, second question, several weeks ago, Tom Ross of 660 News asked you a question about a Green New Deal. That conversation went pretty viral, and just a few days after that, he announced on a podcast quite proudly that he was a communist. I'm wondering if you're concerned that communism is leaching into the mainstream media.
On the first question, on the first question, let me say that, look, as I just said in response to Graham Thompson, our government respects and champions the freedom to protest. It is a exercise of fundamental constitutional freedoms to freedom of speech and freedom of association. And when that one arrest did occur, out of the many different protests that have happened over the past 3 months, as you know, we raised questions. The government does not and should not micromanage operational decisions of police, of course, and did not in that instance, but we certainly did ask questions about why there was an arrest in that instance and there had not been in previous protests before the legislature and other public places. I will just say this, immediately following that arrest, we expanded the allowable number of public gatherings to 50, thinking that would address the issue and allow for those smaller scale protests that we had been seeing. And I totally know what you were saying. As far as I could tell, I looked out the window of the legislature over the past few weeks at smaller protests, and people did seem to be commendably distancing themselves and being mindful of that. In terms of these larger events, look, or any protest, Dr. Hinshaw said something that I thought was very wise when we started this response to the pandemic, that we, quotes, can't enforce our way out of this. And I believe that's true. That is, we do hope that law enforcement agencies, all through this, we've hoped that they would apply the public health measures or enforce them with a great deal of common sense. And in terms of the large recent protests, let me once again state that people are right to speak out against racism in general and anti-black racism in particular. People are right to raise passionate concerns about abuse of state power by police. There's no argument on those points. I would just say to folks who have been thinking of coming together in very large groups, well above the now 100-person limit for outdoor gatherings, that if they're doing so, what they're saying to their fellow Albertans who are making enormous sacrifices, suspending their businesses, having shut the doors of their places of worship, having seen their own fundamental rights impaired, what they're saying is that those sacrifices are somehow less worthy than their own desire to gather in large groups. So we would just ask folks, if they're thinking of doing protests, please think about creative ways of doing that comply with the safe public health rules. And if you're going to get in a group with thousands of people, we would ask that you go and get yourself tested at the very least, as Dr. Hinshaw did yesterday. Oh, and on the second question.
Okay. We're back. We're flying blind because I don't have an earpiece, so I'm just sort of trying to read hand signals through the control room window, which is kind of fun. Kian, before we move on, because it's my job to make sure that we breeze through these super chats, your question to Jason Kenney sure made the mainstream media in Alberta
they were triggered.
livid.
Sheila, they were so upset. It's not even funny. And they started, this Alana Smith from the Calgary Herald, she was just screaming about how dare Jason Kenney take a question from a non-journalist about the ideologies of a real journalist, this Tommy the Commie from 660 News, who I asked this question about. And she was just so upset that in calling me a non-journalist, right, because I'm a conservative, I'm not a journalist, right. Allegedly. She's a hypocrite. But I really thank Jason Kenney for taking that question. And it's a little bit anticlimactic having it actually happen finally. Yeah. We have questions lined up for Justin Trudeau that will be explosive. Yeah. We want to expose him on the spot as being a puppet of China. Jason Kenney hasn't been hiding from us so much, so we don't have really a lot of pent-up questions to ask him. But I seriously thank him for allowing us that opportunity. It's great to be able to have that opportunity that every other journalist in Canada is granted. To that point, though, it's not going to change our questions. I don't feel indebted to Jason Kenney for him having granted this question to us. It's just what we expect normally to happen.
Yeah, And you know what? They aren't gotcha questions.
No.
And
Was it that hard to answer?
well, and it was a good question, and it gave Jason Kenney the opportunity to give a very thoughtful answer to things that people actually want the answers to, as opposed to, you know, the generic mainstream media questions that he seems to get in these press conferences. We've got to get through these super chats, though. That's why I'm in here. That's why we subbed out. So we've got one from Kane Enmark, gives us $5 Canadian. Kane, you're always very generous. Jasmine Barnes is 7 years old, killed in mom's car in Texas. We've got one from Suka Killer. I hope I'm saying that right, because everything I know about Russian I learned from CSGO. And they give us $20 Canadian. Says all deaths in Ukraine are put down as COVID related. I wouldn't be surprised to see just how they're counting those, because I know some people, like there was that one little girl that was killed by her mom.
In Ukraine?
No, I think it was in New York. And her death was put down as, it was counted in the COVID statistics.
Oh yeah, was that on the New York Times like front page thing? And everyone was like, "Why is her name there?"
Yeah. We've got another one from Humanity Rising, gives us $5.49 Canadian. Thank you for all you do, Rebel News. Thank you. That's very kind. We've got one from Jason Hilson, gives us $13.99 and says he's our #1 fan. You know, we have a few #1 fans, you know, #1 in our hearts. We've got one from Ryan Rosti, $10 Canadian, more funding for the RCMP, fitness requirements. Every cop should be able to take down a full-grown male assailant on their own without a gun and do 10 pull-ups and prove it every month. Have you ever tried to do the PAIR test?
No.
I have attempted it, and I
will never even try.
Just for fun. And I know there are obviously some long-serving officers, maybe some on the Tim Hortons Muffin beat in Hampton, Ontario, that probably cannot pass
I'm not athletic at all. I don't know if you know that. The only sports I do are curling and golf, and I chose those two. As my dad wisely put it, is you can smoke and you can drink. Yeah. Well, you can't smoke when you're curling anymore, but I mean, I know, right?
We've got one from Theo, local loaner, gives us £5. Antifa have said that anyone who votes for the Tories should be beaten up, but some black people vote for the Tories. Do Antifa want them beaten up too?
It's always a time bomb reading these super chats.
It is, because I feel like I should jump over here and talk to and speak about some of the elements that we had prepared, but I know it's my job to get through the super chats. No, I'm going to stop. There's an Alberta Nigerian-born Minister of the Crown.
Casey Madu.
Casey Madu. He is great. He was maligned as a Nigerian
white supremacist
during the campaign because he was door knocking with a homeowner, and the homeowner had one of my beautiful Stop Notley lawn signs. So he took a picture, it ended up on his Instagram, and the primarily white left in Alberta decided that he was somehow a black white supremacist. So now, maybe Justin can pull that up, because he's given us the thumbs up. He is being maligned and banned from
he was banned from speaking at a Black Lives Matter conference, and
after they invited him.
And the NDP said no, you can't come. They helped rescind his invitation, saying that he needs to reflect on why he wasn't invited, even though he was. It's like Joe Biden saying, "You're not black."
Yeah.
It's like he's from Nigeria.
You ain't black.
He's pretty black, and he's pretty badass too. He's. I love that picture of him standing next to the Stop Notley sign, because it just really exposed everyone in Edmonton. And you said leftists in Alberta. There really aren't many leftists in Alberta outside of Edmonton. It was all this like leftist Antifa rage mob saying that he was a white supremacist, and it just was like water off a duck's back with him. And then he came to win Edmonton Southwest. With record numbers, being the only conservative in Edmonton to actually get a seat, because everyone just respects him for being such like an authentic person.
Well, and he's got a great success story. Mm-hmm. You know, he's Nigerian. He comes to Canada. I think he's a lawyer, and then he becomes a minister of the Crown. Like, what a great success story! If you care about the success of black people, he seems like the guy to be talking about it, but he has the wrong politics, so then I guess they're Bidening him. But I think we have a clip, because Casey's not backing down. he's doubling down. So he posted this video, I think, that Justin's bringing up to his Twitter account.
Hello, Casey Madu here. Last Friday, I was invited to speak at this stage behind me about my lived experience with racism. I was looking forward to standing with the organizers and our community until the NDP and the allies intervened to have my invitation rescinded. To add insult to injury, the NDP MLA for Edmonton Whitemud, Raki Pancholi, told me to, and I quote, reflect on why I wasn't welcome. Well, MLA Pancholi, I have reflected, and all I can see is that I am black, and yes, I am conservative. This is the same NDP whose propaganda arm, Press Progress, called me a white supremacist during the last election. An election where my opponent told voters to vote as if their skin was not white. I say, enough divisive NDP politics. I have always spoken openly and honestly about my lived experience with racism. Racism is real, and we all must work together to fight it. The scourge of racism is bigger than our politics, and it's also bigger than our political parties. Let's stop the divisive NDP and left-wing politics and vow to destroy racism together.
Casey Madu might be my absolute favorite politician in Canada.
Yeah.
Like across every province, across the federal government and provincial governments, he's just great. Now, we don't have much time left, and I know you want to get through the super chats. And I know in the back room there we have a new chap. His name's Andrew, and I'm not going to try and pronounce his name because, frankly, I can't. And I'm going to swap with him. You read some super chats,
Okay.
and I'm going to go grab some barbecue.
Oh, I
So
see.
Anyways,
I see. You know
thanks
what,
for tuning into
Kian?
the show, guys. I'm going to go eat some steaks, I think it is.
Tell us if it's Alberta approved.
I'll see. It's from
Because
Toronto, so
I'm
we're not sure it's
skeptical
going to be
of
that
Toronto
great,
steaks.
but we'll see. We'll see.
It's a free
Anyways,
steak.
Andrew's going to take this chair. I'm going to head out.
Okay, perfect. And I'll get through some of these. And if Ezra already read some of these, well, then you're getting double the money. We've got... Okay. We've got one from Scott Coulter, gives us $5 Canadian. I don't see a super chat. We've got one from Jack R, gives us $5 Canadian. Kenny's a red Tory. Okay, we already read that one. Lonely Girl, we read that one. Travis Colson, I wasn't eavesdropping. Maybe Ezra read this. I've literally had to stop sharing Rebel News posts because of all the backlash and hateful comments for having different opinions and supporting the Yahoos. We've got one from AF for $20 Canadian. I've given up on Canadians. Glad you haven't. We've got one from Derek G, $5 Canadian. Have you heard of? Yeah, we talked about these. We talked about these, Justin. What are you doing?
Justin.
You lied to me. I went out of my way to make sure that it was very clear.
Unbelievable.
Did we read Texas Truckin'? Did we read that? Okay, great. We've got one from AF, $20 Canadian, more to fight the Canadian Stasi. Jose Sanzana, I hope I'm saying that right. Everything I know about Spanish I learned off a tequila bottle. Gives us $20.99. I was tortured in the Chilean Pinochet regime. Canada is on the same path. Trudeau is a dictator. It would take a military coup to remove him. I was tortured by the CIA and American Marine. Susanna Simpson gives us $5. How about that Wendy Mesley? How about that Wendy Mesley being publicly flogged and humiliated? Bet she wishes she was working for the Rebel now. Yeah, Wendy Mesley was removed from her show for, I think she probably said the N-word.
Not a good look.
Not a good look. They're not clear about what she said, but I don't make the rules. You know, Wendy Mesley has tried to weaponize outrage to take down conservatives and play this guilt by association game. So I suppose live by the sword, die by the sword.
It's a good phrase to live by.
Yeah. Kane Enmark gives us another $5 Canadian. I like Kian. Sorry about the spelling. I had a stroke a few years ago. I hope you're feeling better. Proud Boys Calgary gives us $2 Canadian. Kian deserves a 6-pack of beers to go. Yeah, you know what? Maybe I'll take Kian out for a beer when we get back to where the beer isn't government run. We've got one from Ray W. gives us £5. Thanks, Rebel. No, Ray, thank you. Proud Boys Calgary gives us $2. Biden normalized the "you ain't black" at Maydew and Saunders. We're talking about Chief Saunders there. Derek G gives us $10. Please debunk the systemic racism myth. It's on pillar of the right fascist argument. They say it's the cause of high incarceration rates among Black and Native people communities. That's a great video for Raheel to do. Because I think the largest indicator, the greatest indicator of whether or not you are going to be incarcerated is whether or not you had a dad.
I would agree. There's a great video of Ann Coulter, say of her what you will, but she was on a priest had a show where she was talking about that, and the audience completely turned on her for presenting statistics about single parents producing, whether it's criminality or drug use or anything like that. You should go look that up, but not until after this live stream is done.
Right. Andrew, thanks for coming on the live chat. How do we say your last name?
Just call me Andrew Says. That's my YouTube name that you guys can find me under. But my last name is Chapados. I don't have to hide that, I guess. It's French or Spanish, depending on which part of my...
I thought it was Greek.
I've been told it's Greek. I've been told it's German, but it's actually French.
I kind of like that you don't know, though. Isn't that the point of Canada?
It is. You want to go back 300 years? Somebody want to ancestry.ca me? You want to pay for that? Go ahead.
Now, I think we had you pop on because you have a lockdown video. I think that's on the list. Sorry to spring that on you, Justin. Okay, thumbs up. Perfect. Thank you.
Coronavirus is so obviously politicized. You guys want to know exactly how I figured this out? It's easy. We're allowed to protest. We can't go to a restaurant. You can't go to a movie theater. You can't visit your grandparents in an old folks home, but you can go to a protest. Theresa Tam, she doesn't say no social distancing. She doesn't say stay home because you're going to kill people like they've been saying for months. She says you can go protest. Just don't spit on anyone. Just don't yell. You're going to get water droplets on people, and you might get coronavirus that way. It doesn't make any sense. We need to reopen the province. We need to reopen the entire country, actually. Just don't spit on people, I guess. I don't know where they're getting that from. Just don't spit on people. Just don't yell, and I guess we'll all be fine. Wow, that guy looks great.
Tell me, in Alberta, we're opening back up, and people are getting back to work or starting to. What's been the hardest thing for you during the lockdown? What are you missing the most?
I'm missing just being able to go to restaurants. I'm a big restaurant goer. Couldn't get my haircut. Luckily, we had a person come in and give us haircuts here. And definitely sports. I think a lot of people can agree on that. Yeah. We're jumping back into the NHL playoffs as soon as they're allowed to. I think they've entered their own phase 2. So I've definitely missed a lot of the things that you can get together and do with friends. Go out for a beer, which I know you're allowed to do, which is not fair.
Yeah, we're allowed to go for beers. We're allowed to go freedom beers too, not government beers.
Yes.
Patios, and actually, I think they've relaxed some of the liquor regulations during all this, just to encourage people to go back out. I'm not a big eating out kind of person, because just firing up the car and driving for an hour to go to a restaurant doesn't sound very much fun. But yeah, the sports, getting the kids out of the house. I don't have to worry about getting the kids out of the house, but they miss their friends and they're doing stuff, and that's who I really feel bad for in all this. Grown-ups, there's all kinds of outlets for grown-ups to, there's the internet, there's whatever, but we tell kids to get off the internet, go outside and play, go do sports, and then we take that from them, and then we lament childhood obesity. I think we're already at an hour and 2 minutes here. I think we have a David Menzies Queen's Park protest video, and he's gonna roll it right now, right? Yeah.
Vision created and actually supported by the government. I don't see any better example than that.
What about yourself, ma'am? Do you think Premier Ford will call this other group marching on the legislature a bunch of yahoos?
Probably not. He's probably going to be scared of being called politically incorrect. So, no, it's just for us.
They're not going to touch them because, you know what, it's racial injustice, and apparently COVID does not exist. COVID has a way of figuring out who are Black Lives Matter protesters to freedom fighter protesters. So they're going to leave Black Lives Matter protesters and Black people like myself alone. COVID's not going to affect us, but it's going to affect the freedom protesters who are spreading it.
We've been here for 7 weeks. We've been talked down. We've been called irresponsible. We've been called that we're not taking this seriously. And then you have somebody else who's definitely wants to support an important cause like we discussed, but they've been supported. In fact, the governmental officials actually participate in their movement.
So several yahoos would have protested if they could have found the right arguments, Animal Farm, and of course you're referencing the George Orwell novel, sir. Do you think, depending on what you're protesting,
that determines whether or not you're a Yahoo in the eyes of the Premier?
Yes, I think he has double standard. But I think this is not good to call somebody Yahoo, and I think he kind of stay away from it now.
I'm very proud to be one of the Yahoos there, standing for my rights. But again, he's just a political puppet. He's nothing like his brother, who actually would take a stand and mean it. He's just a liberal puppet, like the rest of them.
What concerns me is the sort of corporate sponsorship of the sort of political, social issues of race. For some reason, that gets everybody's blessing. But when people come out and stand up for their country and their liberties and their civil liberties, then suddenly we're enemies of the people. I don't get that.
What do you account for such a double standard?
Again, the hypocrisy of this government is incredible. We actually were here on Tuesday and Wednesday when the Ontario Parliament as legislation was in session, right? And what they did is we actually had a Randy Healer, independent MPP, wanted to have an amendment passed through that actually would require accountability from this government to actually answer questions exactly why they're imposing the measures that they're imposing. And guess what? They voted against this. And not even that, they actually voted in secrecy. So that vote wasn't even counted. Which of the MPPs voted against this? So if you're going to call somebody not having integrity or being completely responsible, those people need to look in the mirror.
Well, I'm back. David's back. Sheila's here. Apologies for my return.
Well, what a barking mad bunch of Yahoos, Ezra?
You know what? I have to tell you, I've watched so many of your interviews from Queen's Park. They are, to a person, well-informed, well-argued. They know exactly why they're there.
Yeah.
What a contrast to the rent-a-mob who, it's the weekend again. Which placard am I being handed this week? I don't want to talk to journalists because they'll expose how stupid I am. These folks, every one of them has a different perspective. Every one of them, I think, would make a finer advocate for the people of Ontario and indeed the people of Canada than many of the elected officials, including people who were elected as part of the Ford Nation grassroots populist. I'm afraid that Doug Ford is losing his way.
And I think you're right, because the vast majority of people I interview, Ezra, when I say, who did you vote for back in 2018, if you don't mind me asking, it's almost 100% PC. This is his base. And I want to get your perspective on something, and you too, Sheila. What I notice about these protests, especially when they're right of center protests, libertarian protests, however you want to describe it, there is an incredible lack of profanity. There are no death threats. There's nobody getting triggered and acting like a hysterical toddler.
And even less garbage and throwing crap around, you know?
But why is that? I mean, I've always tried to understand the vulgarity of the left, and it only hurts them when they get their point across. I mean, when I covered last week, Ezra and Sheila, that Antifa Light, I call it Antifa Light because they were so pathetic, that protest, nobody could complete a sentence without about 10 F-bombs in there, and I think it just destroys their cause that they can't articulate what they are protesting.
I know in Alberta, and if you've seen any of my coverage of the Bill 6 protests and the carbon tax protests, it's overwhelmingly a family event. And when they're organizing, they're saying, it's family friendly, bring your kids, this is about their future. And I think that's the difference here is the left seems to be anti-child, generally speaking. And I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say that. I mean, they're the ones that think, having children are the problem with the world. It's going to cause global warming, overpopulation. It's not a feminist thing to do to have children. Whereas right-wing protests, we embrace kids and we go to these protests as conservatives because we care about the future. This isn't just about us, it's about them too. And so I think that's reflective in the attitudes and the behavior of the people at these protests.
I think there's one more thing. A lot of leftist protests are essentially destroy the system, tear down the system. I don't even know what I want, but I know what I don't want. Whereas if a conservative goes to protest, he says, well, I'm part of the system, so let me express the changes I want within the structure, because I know the structure is essentially humane and civil, and I don't want to burn everything down. I just want to fix this one problem. And that's the difference. the Keystone XL pipeline was approved by Canada's Energy Board. I can't remember, it was more than a dozen years ago. And I read the review. I think there were 3 objections. It was like, this farmer was worried about this particular issue on this particular land, and so the pipeline company said, oh, okay, so we'll just do this, this, and this, and the farmer said, okay, good. So it was a good faith expression of concern about a particular issue within the system that worked. And I mean, I'm going from memory when I say there were 3 objections, but they were all from people who had skin in the game. Compare that to the thousands of fake AstroTurf shout, scream, jam the system protesters against pipelines once the professional left got involved. Yeah. None of them had skin in the game. None of them wanted to, okay, let's find a way to make everyone a winner. They were just about destroying, shutting down, and jamming. And I mean, if you go back and you would think the Keystone XL pipeline had tremendous organic opposition. It had none.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, and you can say the same with the Northern Gateway pipeline. Actually, the jamming the system was the tactic that they used. They actually called their tactic mob the mic.
Yeah.
That was the campaign. They would go to these open public hearings and basically mob the mic to make sure that no rational voices were heard. Out of province, sometimes out of country, people were coming to take over the discussion and shut out the local voices.
And I like that term, rent-a-mob, Ezra. I mean, I remember back in the Sun News days, my favorite videos of yours was when you went out into the field, and I bet, like me, didn't you start meeting the same characters over and over?
I still remember some of their names, Trish Mills, Dave Vasey, because there's such colorful characters, and then you see them the next time, and the next time, the next time. You say, oh, this isn't like it's a 7-headed hydra, but it's one critter. All right, well, I was getting some messages in my ear from Justin. Justin, what's the plan right now? We've had a good show, showing off some of our talent. What's the plan?
Oh, did you?
There's 3 Super Chats in Sheila's phone. I'm going to have a bite of this hamburger.
Wow, look at that meat.
Look at that. We've got a barbecue going on, and I don't care who knows. Are there more than 6 people? There might be. Can you come and shut it down with a bile? There's Alex Jones. You know, when I was interviewed by Alex Jones,
it's my favorite video ever.
I was interviewed by him, and I stopped talking before he was quite ready. And during that moment, this is an actual interview. I mean, if you click it, you can see I was talking to him from remote, and he wasn't ready for me to come back. He was eating probably the largest hamburger I've ever seen in my life. It's a hamburger so big, I don't even know where you get a bun like that. That patty must be 1 full pound. Can you find that picture of the hamburger again?
It's the size of a Roomba robot.
You know what? It's a Frisbee. So he had it tucked in under his desk, and he was eating it, and I stopped talking a little fast, and he was like, oh, can you get that hamburger up on screen again? So look at that. Look at the size of that.
Justin and I, one time, we went through this video. This is what we do when you're paying us, by the way. We went through this whole video, and I think it's like 1:30. That burger is gone, and he's just crumpling up a napkin.
You know what?
He just hoovered it right down.
I've been to his set, and he's got a lot of stuff on little tables just out of the camera shot. I think he's such an energy guy.
It's gone. It's gone.
You know what? I enjoyed meeting him. I went down to Austin, and so that inspires me. I really don't eat on the set. I have water maybe. Once in a while I eat, but I always regret it because your mouth is full. But I brought this hamburger because we are having a barbecue here, and it's pretty yummy. And because we got friends coming in from out of town. You're darn right we're going to have a barbecue. And I challenge the bylaw officers to try and find us, let alone shut us down. We'll never, you can take my burger when you pry it from my cold dead fingers. My cold fat, pickle-like little sausages fingers. I've never been fatter than after this quarantine. We got a few more Super Chats, then we're going to say goodbye, and we've got a dog video. And I'm going to have a bite of this hamburger while I'm listening to you.
You're going to come back, and it'll just be a crumpled up napkin. Right. Okay, we've got one from James Smith, gives us $10 Canadian. Thank you, David, for reporting on the Queen's Park protests.
Thank you.
It's kind. We've got one from Miss Deborah, gives us $10. I'm an American who loves Rebel News. We're rebels who love Americans. You're all doing a great job keeping us informed and challenging the hypocrites. And Travirus, I think, $5 Canadian, Travirus. As a native, I'm glad to support Rebel News. Keep up the good work. Thank you for doing such a good job. Well, thank you very much. Indigenous prosperity is one of the things that I love to focus on. because the oil sands are the way to bring Indigenous people out of poverty. And
100%.
when left-wing activists, who are primarily white, attack the oil sands, they are damning generations of Indigenous people to poverty.
Isn't that the truth? The largest employers of Aboriginal people in Canada, the oil sands and the mines in Saskatchewan, especially potash, uranium, huge employer. I took the energy out of that, didn't I? I'm sorry.
Sucked the air right out of that one. Good job.
You know, you just making me think about it, and it's so infuriating. The same Greenpeace that I was up in Inuvik in the Northwest Territories, and I met a Métis man, and he said to me, "So my grandfather was not allowed to fur trap. My father was not allowed to be a forester, and I'm not allowed to be an oil man. Is there something that Greenpeace hates about me and my kind?" And I thought, oh my God. You know, is that more than a coincidence? The three industries of this man's family, fur trapping, forestry, and oil, Greenpeace would fly in, destroy everything, and then leave.
Yep.
He was heartbroken when he told me that.
You know, I got to tell you, that reminds me of a Sun News assignment. I went down to Yonge Dundas Square, and Greenpeace had a giant inflatable seal, and it was again against the seal hunt in Newfoundland. And the Green candidate, I think for the Danforth riding, was there with her assistant. And I said, but what about the number of natives that are involved in the seal hunt, of which there are many? And she said, oh, no, well, I mean, if it's just for your personal sustenance, we would have an exemption for natives hunting seals. So my question to her was, and I'll never forget her reaction, I said, oh, so you are in favor of a race-based seal hunt, right?
But it's not even that. It's how do you earn a living? When you're up there, you earn a living from the resources.
Yes.
What are the resources around there? And you're sentencing these people to a subsistence level.
Hand to mouth, yeah.
Exactly. It was just enough to feed you and to clothe you, but not to make it.
But it's a lie anyways, because of course they shut down. I mean, who was doing the fur industry in this country is essentially an Aboriginal industry going back 400 years. So when you ban fur trade, it is absolutely, or as they would say, systemically targeted at Aboriginal. Now we're opening up a whole new thing. We got to wrap it up.
I know. I was just going to say, I would argue that the oil patch is Indigenous as a whole.
Well, I mean, we know that when the first European explorers came through the Fort McMurray area, what's now called Fort McMurray, I forget the name of the explorer, who said Aboriginal folks were using the pitchy bitumen to waterproof their canoes. Well, that's our show for today. What a pleasure to have so much of our talent in the office. It's partly for the barbecues, but we'll do some TV while we're at it. It was great to have Raheel Raza. I was joking around with Andrew Chapados. I just didn't quite nail his last name's pronunciation. Sheila, it's great to see you. David, as always, Keane was here too. So there you have it. A lot of the Rebel crew. And it's our tradition during these troubling days to end with a friendly dog video. Yes. And I never know what's coming because Justin